instead of Lions, Tigers, and Bears, oh my, it's Raz scores, franchise tags, and 40 times, oh my. The combine has come and gone, and there's a ton of information going around. Raz scores getting handed out like report cards at the end of a school year. People holding on to it like it's the last bit of content they will consume. But there is more to the combine than a Raz card or a 40 time or, a running back benching. Okay. It looks cool, not necessary. So there's no better time than to secure your priors than at the combine. And on this program, I'm sure that's going to happen. But the goal today is to look at what happened at the combine and ask ourselves, what did we actually take from it in this introduction to the 2024 rookie class as Dynasty Points heads forth to the rookie draft? I, of course, am your host of the most time on his hands. I am Thomas Sibley. You can find me at El Nostra Thomas everywhere. My fun fact of the day is, for the first time in 2 years, Rich Eisen has infected my heart with hope that Trey Lance will be the future quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings.
Hey, I'm Jacob Sanderson, at Jacob Sanderson on Twitter. My fun fact today is that on this day, March 5th, some 26 years ago, Viagra got its FDA approval.
Woo, woo, woo. Helping middle-aged spreadsheet virgins worldwide.
Now we have the NFL Combine in case you can't get a prescription.
Hey, you can go to Felix.com and get yourself one if you really need.
I would need any type of medication with or without FDA approval after watching that Xavier Worthy 40-yard dash.
Hey man,
I was calling my doctor. I said it's been 5 hours. I said it's been 5 hours since the combine. I still can't get to sleep.
I don't know what to do. Cold showers aren't working. Lucas?
Oh, goodness. Well, my name is Lucas Gilbert. You can find me on Twitter at LGilbertFF. And my fun fact of the day is that the first NFL Combine was held in Tampa, Florida in 1982.
Wow.
So,
not
as fun as your alls, but
Tampa loses everything. She is down bad for Tampa. I mean, where do we have no show sheet for today? Like, we are coming in. There's so much information. It is so hard to really structure the three of us just being elated to watch super athletes work out at the Underwear Olympics. It is a spectacle, and that held true this week. Where do you guys want to dive in? I think the easiest thing to dive back into is just talking about the quarterbacks. I think quarterbacks will be nice and fast. Okay, Caleb Williams didn't throw. Oh no. A lot of elite quarterbacks don't throw. I think Drake May should have thrown. If I'm being honest, there's a little bit of an up and down as to where, he's going to slide in the draft. No, he's going to go as the top 3 quarterback. No, he's number 2. He could actually be 4th or 5th with Bo Nix coming. Like, you've heard it all. I think he should have thrown. So let's hear from you guys. Also, shout out Tennessee. You guys, Milton. I mean, that was... That got him selected in the 6th round right there. Someone's taking a shot on him late in the draft.
Someone's gonna have the I can fix him energy.
Yeah, that's he. You know who? What
some guy who got in way too many bad relationships in college and is thrice divorced is gonna look at Joe Milton and be like, I can fix him.
You know what? He gave me vibes of a former Indianapolis Colt legend, Jacob. Jeff George.
I was just gonna guess Jeff George. It took me a second.
He was giving me Jeff George vibes.
No way, it's floater ball Peyton. And then I was thinking, I was like, Curtis Painter have a big arm, and I was like, oh yeah, Jeff George.
Jeff George, that's the one, man. He gave me real vibes with that. But no, seriously. So I think someone's going to take a shot on him. I think the same people that took a shot at Hendon Hooker, hoping he was going to be something, should just, if you're that type of fantasy player, just keep rolling the dice with Milton.
Well, I can say that Hendon. Well, I mean, we'll see what the NFL life holds. Speaking strictly for their college prowess, no comparison between Hendon, Woman of the Night, and Joe Milton, that's for sure.
I will say I only have one of their autographs, and it's on purpose. Love Joe Milton, but Hendon Hooker right here, baby.
Yeah, I just mean that if there's a quarterback, like if you're in like the 4th round of a rookie draft, and you're like, I don't want the wide receiver 91 out of this rookie draft, I'm going to take this quarterback and hope and pray. That's the guy.
I was so disappointed that he didn't run the 40.
Yes.
That he was clocked at 22 miles per hour at one point in time this season. I think it's Texas A&M. And man, that would have been really fun. At least we would have had something to talk about.
I'm just going to point out that we have 1 hour to cover approximately 40 relevant rookies. We've spent 2 hours talking about Joe Milton, who will never throw an NFL pass.
Hey, I still believe.
Preseason, man, it matters.
I believe, baby.
That's true. And I will watch his preseason game just to watch the moon balls.
I'm sorry. If Zach Wilson got to throw footballs for like 3 years, I think Milton has a legit chance. So why don't you shove it and don't steal my thunder here? But we can move to something. I think the quarterbacks.
It's Nico season.
I don't think any of them really hurt themselves at all. Some people were taking a shit on McCarthy. I think the people that did that were going to do that anyway. I think it didn't matter what he did. Different people clipping different. This is a big thing. If we're going to talk about theory of the combine, big thing you got to watch out for. You see one clip of the combine if you're not watching, and it's somebody saying, oh, he missed through it at this direction to this way. And then you see the other angle. It's like, oh, the wide receiver clearly cut his route off the wrong way when you just flip the. So it's, it's like politics. You got to watch what side of the spectrum you're looking on and live in the middle, because it could take you one way or the other. You can go down a real rabbit hole and go for a ride. But I don't think the quarterbacks really, nothing changed there for me. I think everything's the same. Obviously we know, interview combine shenanigans were plentiful over the weekend. Let's not do that. But let's talk about running backs, because the class for running backs has been dumped on all year. But now the combine hits all of a sudden, immediately like clockwork.
Oh yeah. Now we got running
now
back.
The running back. Oh, there's quite a few backs I always liked in this class. No, you didn't. One thing I will say, I really hate that Brooks couldn't do anything. I really hate that, because I still think he'd be the RB1. But Jacob, you had a new RB1.
No, I had the same RB1.
I would say new to consensus, right? As everyone else is catching up. But you had him as the RB1. I should say everyone else has a new RB1.
Fair enough. I was hoping that I'd be able to release my running back breakdown before the combine, so that I could then kind of track my pre-combine, post-combine ranks. Fortunately, I wasn't able to, but I was able to do a show with Liam Murphy where I ran down my top 10 at the running back position. And my RB1 there was Trey Benson. And I'm certainly not locked into that. That might change. But that was going into the combine. I would say that if Jonathan Brooks, and it's not about not getting his combine numbers, it's more about just the fact that he is like going to be coming into the NFL off an ACL injury, which I think has potential to severely impact his rookie year. I think if he was entirely healthy, he would probably be my RB1 in the class. But taking that into account and not seeing it as a massive gap, I have Benson right now as my RB1. And the reason for that is I think this is a class in which there's really no perfect prospect. Like you look through every running back prospect. Okay, what's the size? What's their workload in college? What's their production profile? What's their level of efficiency? What's their receiving background? Everybody's got some issues. They either broke out too late. They're too small. They are too inefficient. They're this, they're that, they're this, they're that. So to me, when I look at all these kind of flawed, incomplete profiles, I just look at what do I think has the chance to be the biggest hit. And for me, that's looking at Benson, where got the quintessential size and he's got the athleticism, where if he hits in a big way, I think it could be massive. And he goes on and does that at the combine, which I think was, necessary and clear. So I think, that was really massive to see.
Lucas, I know you were plugged in with the Full Tilt Devy show all year with these college profiles and prospects. There's some to be said about Benson's production, right? He doesn't have. There's some production lacking for him over at Florida State. However, 15 touchdowns, 905 yards. He obviously can catch the ball a little bit, not as much as we would like, right? With 20 receptions. So did he move the needle for you? Is it Corum? Let's just talk post-combine running backs out of the eyes of Lucas Gilbert.
It's just really good to kind of get some validation behind some of these stats. His breakaway yardage was fantastic. Whenever we don't have these athletic numbers to compare with, being able to see that they can hit those really big plays, that's the best stat that we kind of have to kind of validate that. And yeah, super fast. Biggest knock on him that we've seen the whole time is that he might be a really good athlete and not necessarily a great running back. If that makes sense. He's just, you want athletes on your team. You want him to have the ball, and you hope that he can bang around the hole a little bit to find the seam and take off. That's just what his stat profile looks like. It's not elite yards after contact. It's not elite elusiveness ratings. Not elite missed tackles force.
99th percentile.
What?
His missed tackles force is the 99th percentile.
It's really
I'm
good.
looking at total. I'm not looking at the rate. My apologies.
Jesus, Lucas.
I know.
No, I don't know. No, I mean, I don't think he's like an absolutely insane elite tackle breaker either. I think what he brings you is a lot of juice and creativity in the open field as a runner, where he can hit those home runs. Like in terms of just is he powering through tacklers? I think he runs with adequate power. I think he runs a little bit upright. I would say still he's strong in that area. I think the biggest concern is vision behind the line. And I tend to not like running backs with that kind of profile, but that's the kind of class we're at, where there's like, there's the guys that I think are more fundamentally sound that I don't think have very much upside, where I might be more confident they're going to be a good running back. Like Blake Corum is an example of this, where I have a lot of faith in Blake Corum to make the right decisions. And I'm probably higher on Blake Corum than a lot of people, especially a lot of people in the data community. But I don't know how big the hit is capable of being on a Blake Corum. Like I look at like a Brian Robinson type, and it's like, is that kind of as good as we're going to get out of Blake Corum, where he doesn't have necessarily the receiving experience, doesn't necessarily have the athletic juice, where, how impactful is that going to be? It's entirely possible there's just no really impactful running back out of this class. But if there is one, I think it's less likely to come from, him, or Estime is kind of a similar profile to Corum.
I think you're exactly right. I mean, whenever you first were talking about Trey Benson, you said he's the one with the highest ceiling, most likely of having that extreme breakout. And I completely agree with you on that. Whenever you're talking about Blake Corum, I think he's going to be in the NFL for a really long time. He's going to be part of several good backfields, but is he going to be that elite or even fringe RB1 type player for you ever? Highly unlikely. He might have one or two RB2 seasons, we'll see, but he doesn't have that same elite ceiling. And as we're going through it, the next biggest winner, I think, aside from Trey Benson, is Marshawn Lloyd. Had an excellent time, 4.46, has elite size, or maybe not elite, but definitely high percentile that you want.
What was it, 5'8", something, 215, 216?
Yeah. What was that?
Was it 5'8" and a chunk of change and 216? And yes, Spence, I'm not entirely sure what you're referring to, but we see your comments. I assume that means it works.
That is exactly what it
5'9",
means.
220 was his weigh in.
5'9", 220. Okay. Wow.
Yeah, and I mean, all the stats back it up too. Whenever you've been looking at him for this long, he was the bell cow out at USC Junior before he moved on to real USC, and they relied on him. Thanks, Jacob. They relied on him. He has really good peripheral numbers the whole time. Don't necessarily like his breakaway yards. I don't like his yards after contact as much. It's still really good. It's just not the elite of the elite. But I think that he's the next best chance of having that true breakout out of this running back class. And you already mentioned Audric Estime. That was my biggest disappointment watching it. And we're talking about numbers at the combine backing up the film that we've seen, the stats that we've seen, if you're in the data sheets. And he's not elite whenever it comes to breakaway yards. Yes, he has some really nice plays against college competition where he will have one or two big runs, but I think that's more from him running the person who was going to catch him over, and then nobody else on the field was at least close enough whenever he started going downhill. He's still somebody I'm interested in, but he is not going to be somebody I am actively targeting in the second round. We'll see if he's sitting there in the third. Yeah, I'll scoop him up Probably quite a bit, but he's not somebody I'm going out and targeting anymore. And he had the highest realistic chance, I think, of being my RB1 out of the combine if it wasn't going to be either Jonathan Brooks or now Trey Benson.
Like, I think there's one player that we can just put to rest now, and this one's going to hurt Lucas, but Braylon Allen just deciding not to run after he watches Bucky Irving.
I'm not Braylon Allen fan. Hold on. I'm not
Last week you were all
I said
Braylon Allen
the
RB1.
highest ranked running back according to ADP as I was speaking. Yes, he definitely hurt himself. We needed some numbers.
You gave yourself over to the people. And how did that
you
go?
know what? We put these things out into the universe on the internet for people to watch. We can go back and watch it. But yes, he definitely did hurt himself. He's somebody that I would have loved to have seen do really anything at the combine to help himself out, because that's another person we want to see big guys run fast in.
I think he knew it wasn't going to happen. I think he did what Kyron Williams should have done last year, is realize he wasn't going to run quick and went, I'm good, bro. Like, from what I've seen, what I've not seen is no one has any idea, at least from what I've seen. Granted, I haven't done serious digging, so this is part-time journalism, but I haven't seen a reason why he didn't run. And I really think it's because he knew he was going to run poorly, which I'm all for that. If you know you're going to run poorly, wait for your pro day. But
I thought he was going to come, and I thought he was going to run when I saw him weigh in, because he's always been listed over 240 at Wisconsin. And you never know if that's true or not, but it's kind of like the thing with height. It's like if you're a 5'8" guy, maybe you go to your dating profile, you say you're 5'9", but like I'm 6'4". I don't lie on my dating profile. I just say my actual height. I don't see any reason for Braylon Allen to have lied about his weight all this time. Like, to me, if you're Braylon Allen, you're 245 pounds. Like, you're not adding any. I think that's more trustworthy than a guy who says he's 201. Okay, you're 201. We've all been there before. But with Allen, he comes in 235, and I'm like, oh, like, dude, shed a little bit. He's going to try and run. And I was disappointed because I had a big parlay of overs on 40 times.
You were betting on the 40s?
Yeah, and I got them all correct, but I had a 4-part parlay, and Allen I thought was my lock. He just needed to be over 450, and then my parlay hits, but it pushes on that one. So I would have won double the money if Allen had run and not broken 4.5, which I would put the odds at about 10%. So I don't know. Who knows? Maybe he'll run at the pro day. Maybe they'll get a little tailwind for him at Camp Randall. The jumps were bad. That we can report. He did do the jumps, and they were piss poor.
Well, that's one of the reasons I really think he decided, like, I'm off to a bad start. And one thing that also has to be taken into account is the combine is not easy to do. I have done a Canadian collegiate combine, like something you had to do at or you got to do at like the high school level, right? We go to camps and they would put you through a combine. Even at that age, it was like, you'll go there in the morning, you stretch, you do some training, you go in to watch some film, you come back out and stretch again, then you start running, then you go watch the film, then you do positional drills, then you it's a long day. Like, you're there from 8 till 8. I can't imagine being there at that pro level, the stress that these guys are under. Like, the tight ends were seemingly running until like midnight, it felt like. I swear to God, it just went forever. And I remember that was a thing last year, because now they're televising it in prime time. It used to be during the day, and players were complaining about how late they were out there running. That's not easy. That's not going to your local Snap Fitness, right? And busting out 45 minutes on your elliptical, right? After a long day. Hard work. No, just the pressure of that will make you sweat off 5 pounds. Like, it's not easy. And some guys just don't have that. So I'm not saying they're scared to compete, because we're better than that, but it does matter in a way. So I'm wondering how much of that, after seeing, okay, I got off to a bad start, which is how I'm going to wrap this in. How much of that, after seeing, okay, I got off to a bad start, which is how I'm going to wrap this in. How much of that, after seeing, okay, I got off to a bad start, which is how I'm going to wrap this in. How much of that, after seeing, okay, I got off to a bad start, which is how I'm going to wrap this in. maybe he got off to a bad start, realized he wasn't there, and he's like, I have my pro day. I'm going to wait before I completely tank my draft stock. So I really thought that was interesting.
Probably better off not running, right?
Right, exactly.
You're gonna run 4.7. Don't run.
And since I already referenced before I get to kind of moving on from the running backs, there's two more things I want to say about the running backs. First off, Isaac Guerrero is going to be my most drafted running back. I don't care. He's built like Jonathan Taylor, and he runs like Devon Achane.
There you go.
If Achane was built like this, Achane would have been a first-round pick. Like, this guy is disgustingly athletic. Maybe he's better off playing linebacker. I don't know. Like Scott Barrett, I saw Scott Barrett talking about how AJ Dillon just should have played linebacker. Like, he was a freak athlete, but he picked the wrong position. Maybe Isaac's going to do the same thing. I've already seen the Pacheco comps for him. I don't know. I think
it's not ideal that he was a backup running back at Louisville.
Ignoring it. You know what? I blame irrational coaching. We can't expect coaches to be rational. I'm going to blame that. I'm going to find a way to get him in my he's easily going to be drafted at like 212 far too many times. I'm going to Chase Brown myself with Isaac.
212. That's pretty high.
No.
I did have a pretty good yards per route run.
There you go. See, Lucas feed
nice,
me
specialist.
Look, feed me all of that garbage like it's McDonald's, and I'm on an absolute bender.
So, before we move on from the running backs, just want to hit a couple of quick names. Again, Bucky Irving didn't have a great day. It's just we're not seeing what we saw on film backed up in the testing, which is kind of scary. It makes you really nervous. And I think, Jacob, you tweeted this out. I know a lot of people did, about don't chase the outlier with this.
Here we go. Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
so
I texted Jacob and wanted to talk to him about this because we've seen the Bukyron did it. And I talk a lot in the Fantasy Points Discord, but you should go to fantasypoints.com, make yourself a free subscription, get into the Discord so you can get in to the Fantasy Points Dynasty Discord where things are popping off there every day because I'm a company man and we got to say it. So I've already seen it a lot. Well, look what Kyron Williams did. Bucky's just a baller. I don't buy that because I talk a lot about not chasing outlier statistics.
Like I like Bucky. He was, prior to this combine, he was my RB3. He'll be moving down from that. So I take this as a guy who's a fan of Bucky Irving. I love what he adds in the receiving game. The issue is, like, and I spent a lot of time looking into this last year when we were talking about Achane and Gibbs, with two of the top running backs in the class being really small guys. Was you gotta, if you're gonna succeed at a major level, like RB1 type ceiling in fantasy, as a small running back, you've really got to catch passes and you've really got to be fast. And Irving has the pass catching component down. That's for sure. But is totally lacking now in the speed component. And he came in really on the low end of what I was expecting. Like, I was hoping maybe we'd see high 190s. He comes in down at 192. So that's like in the Achane zone, even a little heavier than him. But like, that's a step below where we get into like the Jahmyr Gibbs comp zone, where we could bring up, the Reggie Bushes and the LaShawn McCoys and that tier of back. So he's kind of down with Achane and Warwick done. And now you're asking him to do it at a 4, 5, 6. And so where does that look now? It's like, well, now we're in the world of James White and Danny Woodhead and Giovanni Bernard and Theo Riddick, and just insert any satellite back that you want to. But that's kind of the world we're living in right now. With Kyron Williams, he's small, not 192, not 192. Also very compact. And that was a success. But one thing is, we kind of only have 1 year of it being a success, right? So right now, Kyron Williams is kind of an incomplete analogy.
Yes.
To be clear,
yes.
If Bucky Irving ever has one season as good as Kyron Williams had, massive success. But the story is still not yet written on Kyron's career. We don't know the rest of the way it's going to go. We know he had one phenomenal season. And I really think he just kind of landed in a spot that was the perfect confluence of factors between him being very good, being very solid, being in this Sean McVay offense where they value not substituting out personnel. They want a back who can handle pass protection responsibilities and provide enough in the running game and stay on the field every single play.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of a unique situation where Kyren Williams would have gotten this role. I don't think if Kyren had been drafted by many other teams, he ever would have gotten this level of role. I think in most places, he's getting 30% of the carries and long down and distance responsibilities. And then this brings up the other issue with Bucky Irving, which is that Kyren Williams, the first way he ever got into an NFL field, the first thing he ever got drafted for in the NFL was being a baller of a pass protector. And Bucky Irving is not that. He's really struggled with pass protection. He's a dynamic receiving option, but what is dynamic, right? It's dynamic in terms of, okay, he's capable, he can run routes, but 4, 5, 6, dog, are we throwing you screens? I don't know. Usually the NFL likes throwing fast people screens, right? Except for the Eagles, who have AJ Brown on the roster and throw all their screens to Julio Jones. But everybody else, likes throwing screens to fast dudes. So I think Bucky will have a long NFL career. And if he drops, way down below where we were thinking about him in drafts, I'll probably be interested as like a 3rd round pick and kind of hope for that Michael Carter or Devin Singletary kind of outcome. But at this point in time, I think you got to move him down below guys like Marshawn Lloyd, guys like Jalen Wright.
Right.
I would argue that, now he's now kind of in the same tier on different sides of the spectrum of estimating, where it's like we have this back we think is good.
Yeah.
We have this back who can do a thing, but we have this back who has such substantial limitations that it's unlikely they can do the rest of the things to put it all together into a big ceiling.
Right. There's a lot of things that have to go right for an RB to get what Kyren Williams got to do, right? There was the we hate Cam Akers and his family, and then there's the no, never mind, we're going to get rid of Darrell Williams, or Darrell Henderson, sorry, Jacob's favorite, his boy. He seemingly gets yeeted into the sun for no reason. Then Cam Akers comes back, and he gets the bell cow work, and we're like, Kyren Williams must really suck. He can't even get on the field here. And then the next offseason, all of a sudden, it's all we love Cam Akers. Never mind. Lied to you. See you later. You and your family. Peace. Homeless. Have fun. And then it's Kyren Williams is the only running back allowed to touch the ball. What's that? You get hurt for a few games? Great. We're going to bring back Henderson. We're going to rotate a couple backs in there. And as soon as you're healthy, 90% of the snaps again. McVay is one of the few guys that do this. Jacob, I remember years ago when this was the first rendition of the Full Tilt Dynasty podcast, we talked about Todd Gurley was really a fortunate running back more than he was a super elite one, because again, he got volume that other guys weren't getting. We got Kyren Williams basically in a Christian McCaffrey role with not Christian McCaffrey's skill in an offense that had a resurgence. So that would have to go right for one of these outliers to really perform. Otherwise, you're probably looking at like a 6 to 8 point per game guy, probably in the Gus Edwards points per game territory, even though it's kind of a different skill set. That's the reality of where he's at right now. Because again, he's not getting on that field for the pass pro. So
yeah, if you don't want to burn your eyes out, don't go look at his PFF pass blocking grade. It's rough. But not to even.
And
keep
I will
the
say
grave
quickly,
deeper.
the PFF pass blocking grade thing, because this is just my personal pet peeve. I think I'm not an anti-PFF person. I'm a PFF lover, not a PFF hater. The one thing that I think holds like zero water is PFF pass blocking grade. I think it's just like a failure of their methodology, where because everything is so binary, where like it doesn't really scale. It's like you either get a +1 or a -1. I don't know the exacts of their system in terms of the numerical order, but that's effectively how it works. You either get a positive or a negative, and then it's an aggregate. That with pass blocking, like the running backs who play the most long down and distance get the hardest assignments. They end up having more negatives. They end up having worse grades. I think that's my intuition as to why it's flawed. I don't know for sure, but what I can say is like there's just way too many examples now of running backs who several coaching staffs turned over and continually give long down and distance work to, who have horrible PFF pass blocking grades in the NFL, for me to take it seriously. Like I just don't think every coach is dumb and every film analyst is dumb when they're like, we want Zeke pass blocking, we want Jerick McKinnon pass blocking, we want Darrell Williams pass blocking, we want Leonard Fournette pass blocking. Like there's so many running backs who are like known for their pass protection, and then they just light up the bottom of the pass protection ranks, Kyren Williams included, that I think it's flawed. But I will say that on film, I think he sucks at pass protecting. So I agree with you. I just have that issue with the.
No, it's important to note one thing I want to add before, because I want to spend the tight ends. Okay, I think that's going to be a next week's thing, because I know Scott's been on an absolute heater with Brock Bowers. I think it's hilarious. I do think though that your boy from Tennessee,
Bowers? He doesn't like him because he gets too many screen passes.
Screen merchant, yeah.
Okay.
That's what we hear. We'll see. We're going to get the sports score.
That's the flag he's planting. He's anti-Bowers.
I think I'm not going to put that in his mouth yet. I'm not going to put, but just, he said he was undecided last time I talked to him. So we'll get the real answer next week, Scott. Scott, everyone can tag Scott right now. Tell him that we're coming for his answers on Brock Bowers right now. It'll irritate him, and I'll also laugh hysterically. I just want to ask about one tight. I don't want to ask about a tight end. I just want to point out that the Ravens are talking to another tight end from the combine, and I just wanted to slam my head against the table. Yeah. Could you guys just not, like, what are they planning? Just to already, they're just going to run out likely Andrews and this boy here, although he did test kind of poorly. So
can we have a 4 tight end set with Kohler? Is that possible?
No, I never want to see Kohler on the field again, if I'm being honest with you. But Jatavian Sanders, rough right now in terms of sports scores, according to Scott. Real rough. Not good. 46. Not great. But that's it for tight ends right now. I know there's the Penn State tight end. I think it's Johnson, who really, again, Penn State freak athlete.
Yeah.
All right. Story, whatever. We've seen it. But again, I think the tight ends is pretty okay right now. I want to hit wide receivers for the next half hour.
Yep. Let's do it.
That's, to me, I'm going to backtrack. I had one more running back question that I completely skipped. One more thing. Who is the running back that creeps into the first round?
None. Oh, of Dynasty drafts? I thought you meant the NFL.
No, not the NFL draft. Dynasty drafts. Who is it?
Whichever one the Chargers draft.
Oh, you're copping out that way. Okay, Lucas?
I think right now the best bet I have is Trey Benson. That's the one I would put money on, just because, at least from fantasy players' perspectives, we're going to see the numbers, and that gets people really excited. And I don't think he's going to get worse than day 2 draft capital. I think he's somewhere in the 3rd, but
my real answer, I think there will be 2 running backs that end up going in round 1. I think Brooks will go in round 1.
That was my answer.
It seems like the community generally likes him quite a bit. So assuming he does go where he's projected to go, which would be late round 2, early round 3, I think he'll go there. And then I think one of these other guys is going to get a very good landing spot. All the Chargers are saying constantly is how much they want to run the ball. They tell you every single day, like, we want to run the ball. And then they're like, we're not re-signing Eckler. We want nothing to do with this man. And then you look at their cap situation, and they just feasibly can't really sign Jacobs or Barkley, I don't think. So all signs point to round 2 or round 3, they are drafting a running back into an incredible spot for a running back in fantasy. And there's no way we're not going to draft that guy in the first round.
Spiller season, baby.
Everybody says it's Corum. That would annoy me because I want to draft Corum, and I don't really want to pay like a half round premium just solely because of a coaching college narrative that would make me upset. So I hope the Chargers draft someone I hate that I don't have to pick. But if they draft Corum or Benson, I guess I'll chase them.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think Brooks was my answer. Brooks was my answer a long time ago. The first time I did a mock draft, I just think one is going to creep in.
Allen.
Oh God, that would actually be so tight. That would be tight because then you would get the running back on the Chargers in the 2nd round because people are going to realize that Allen's not athletic. And it's going to be great.
No, he's going to go. No, I want Braylon Allen going 111. That's what I'm here for.
Just so you can watch everyone else and trade all your 111s.
I need someone to fade in this class. This is the problem I'm having with this class. It's like, I
have a few for you. We're talking the wide receivers.
Like a little further down, sure. But at least in the top 7, there's no one that I don't want to be at market on, at least where they're projected to be drafted, which is a big issue for me. Because like normally that's how I go into rookie draft season. It's like, what are the 1 or 2 guys I'm just not afraid of missing out on? And then figure out a couple that I really like to target at their price. And then the rest I just draft. I don't even care where I have them ranked. I just try to draft them at their ADP. I basically get a lot of my targets, taking that out of my face, and let the rest be what it'll be. But in this class, like I don't know. I don't really have anyone out of that top 7 where I want to fade them. Like, you know, so it's gonna be difficult. So I hope there's some goofy stuff like a Braylon Allen who I don't like going to the Chargers. I need people that I can avoid.
Well, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, what do you want, Lucas?
I was going to say, you mentioned the Tennessee guy, Jalen Wright. He made himself a lot of money. Definitely be watching his name. I don't think he'll get day 2 draft capital. I think that's wishful thinking on my part, at least right now. But somebody definitely want to be paying attention to. And then 2 quick names. Make sure you're checking out Rasheen Ali's Pro Day, wherever that is. Really curious to see what he's going to run. He weighed more than I was expecting. I thought he was going to be sub 200. He's over 200, really explosive. And then last but not least, Isaiah Davis, who I think is one of Jacob's boys. So make sure you're checking out him. He had a pretty good day. Not great, but if there's somebody from one of these lower levels who are going to do it and a name you need to watch, it's Isaiah Davis. And now I'm done.
Devy guy flexing a couple extra ones, cutting me off before going to break. Classic Devy mentality. But you should be checking out the Full Tilt Devy pod, which will be going tomorrow night over at Full Tilt Dynasty over on YouTube.
Sir.
Hit that with the sub. We'll be back. 5-second break, Jacob. Nice and quick. I do miss the snap from Billy, I'll admit.
Yeah. And you Buck? There's a Buck you're trying to get rid of?
Text Billy and be like, Billy, I just need you to record a video of you doing the snap so I can put it in at the end of our transitions.
Okay.
Truly amazing. Well, you said you wanted some players to fade, Jacob.
Yeah,
I'm sure that I'm fading because I think one is going to go in the first round of rookie drafts, and I don't want to be at market. And I think the other one, people like Lucas are going to push up boards, and I don't want them to. Well, actually, I do want them to because, again, I want to fade somebody. So let's go Troy Franklin, receiver that I'm, as of right now, with what we know now, going to be happy to be out on. And then
how come?
And yeah, Keon Coleman. I don't like his profile very much as of right now. Like his analytical profile, not something I like. I don't see the role for him to being an upper tier fantasy asset. He just feels like a tweener type receiver. Real Curtis Samuel-y to me. And I hate player comps. One thing Dynasty Points listeners are going to understand is I actually hate player comps. I know people love them because they like to take a big shit on them, but they can be fun, but I hate doing them directly. I care more about the role. So I look at somebody like Troy Franklin. I don't know what his role is going to be for me right now. With what we know. And I just see more Jalen Guyton than I do an effective, like even a Mecole Hardman MVS. I don't typically like those guys.
Is that like what's bringing you to that limitation on him?
A lot of it was just his usage. I think is going to be weird because we're going to talk about Brian Thomas, and Lucas here is telling me that he's a one route merchant. And I don't see that, which I kind of think is funny, but just look, I'm not a film expert, so I'm going to knock that off just off the top, but I don't see him being as crisp as some of the other receivers in the class. I understand that his combine was pretty up to snuff for what people thought, but for me, it's just a combination of profile. Like I like his size and everything for sure. 176, I would have liked a little heavier,
really
obviously.
Skinny. I mean, that's the big thing that people are worried about with him.
Yeah, but again, I see him as a little bit of a limited route runner. I see him being stuck on that outside field stretcher role. I just don't see consistent like fantasy production coming from Troy Franklin right now. With what
I'll say this for Franklin. I mean, the one thing that he's got going for him for sure is like really, I'll ignore the top 3 wide receivers for now, but out of this next batch, like just purely like production-based analytics profile vacuum, he really pops. It's really him and Worthy that hit the marks of like hitting 2 years, over 2 yards per team pass attempt as the early breakout age. is now breaking out or coming out of the draft after his 3 years. Like, he really hits all the marks, which is nice to see. The skinny size is a concern. I feel kind of the same way about that you mentioned off the top, about, you know, what JJ was saying about speed, where I'm about as concerned about his size as the NFL would be. You know, and maybe a little bit on top, in that we don't have a ton of history of those types of players, but we do have Devonta Smith, who is, you know, really taller, skinnier guy, right?
Yeah, he's also
one thing with
outlandishly
Franklin
good.
is it's different than like a Xavier Worthy or a Rondale or a Wandale discussion, where it's not that he's short, he has the appropriate height, it's just he's really, really skinny. I have seen concerns, and I think that this is just like common sense based on how skinny he is, that he's going to struggle in press situations. And you always have some level of concern about a Pac-12 wide receiver who primarily specializes, you know, working down the field, where it's a little bit more wide open spaces. All have interest, but yeah, there's a couple guys that I probably like a little bit more for the moment, but he's a pretty clean profile.
It's his inconsistencies, right? Even inconsistencies at the thing that he's good at, which is the deep ball, tracking, fighting off defenders. Like you said, in the NFL, you get a guy that struggles against press, you're going to have a rough time. So I think he's going to be a little overdrafted. And again, for like you said, and I'm not saying I'm not going to have any. I'm not going to have zero. We're portfolio players. I'm not going to have a zero. I try to avoid that just in case. Most likely I am wrong. But I'm going to be happy to be under market, which was my biggest point. Yeah, that's one of the guys for me. And I know that Lucas is going to rip me apart when I want to hype up my boy Brian Thomas here. Like the same reason.
Yes, let's talk about Thomas, because I'm kind of more on Thomas's side about Thomas. I have Brian Thomas at wide receiver 4.
It's a lot of Thomases there.
And I've been a fan of his. So yeah, let's hear the anti-case first, and then we can maybe tag team you.
I mean, the biggest thing right now from an analytical profile is the fact that he doesn't have a diverse route tree, at least on paper. He was in a LSU offense that you might look at as inflated. He also doesn't have the early breakout age that we're wanting. So all of those together, it doesn't make you feel good whenever you're drafting him, just from some of the bigger things that we're looking at whenever we're looking at the analytics of these wide receivers. He does have some just absolute wow plays, but I think that he's going to be a better pro than he is a fantasy football asset. I'm still going to be siding on Troy Franklin. I just have more trust there. I like the profile better. His numbers and size are fine to me. Yes, I would have liked him to be a little bit heavier, but we do have an established history of him increasing the yards after contact that he can generate, increasing his skills with the balls in his hand. And with Brian Thomas, we really only have one season to base it off of in a pretty historic, but maybe slightly inflated offense at LSU.
Well, I will say this to help our propaganda machine over here on the top of the screen. Our draft expert, Brett Whitefield, he really likes Brian Thomas. So he likes him so much, in his mock draft 2.0, he has him going to the Jacksonville Jaguars at number 17. And let me tell you,
it's not gonna
he
happen,
goes to the Jaguars.
Chris Ballard has already selected him.
At 15? I don't know. You guys, he has Quinion Mitchell.
If you told me Brian Thomas or the field right now, I would think long and hard about it.
Okay, I'm just saying it's hyping my machine up. Okay, give me him as the wide receiver 1 on Jacksonville, and I'm telling you, I will be more overweight as him as a rookie pick as I am at my waistline. It will be extreme. Okay, forget the McDonald's on a bender. It'll be Domino's 5 days a week. It's going to be bad for me. Because especially, you want to feed into that propaganda even more. Report came today that it looks like Calvin Ridley is going to hit free agency. So Jacksonville needs a first-round wide receiver for their potential first-round bust quarterback. So there you go. Give me that Brian Thomas connection right there to prop me into. I already had him at wide receiver 4. Okay. And I know there's no other place for him to go at this point with the top 3. But let me tell you, Jacksonville at 17. I don't know. I can't be trusted. I'm just putting my emotions out there for the people.
I like Thomas a lot. I mean, there's not a ton of players that there's not a ton of players that you can think about like him, but that's because there's not a ton of players that are as big and fast as he is, which is really impressive. He comes in just under 6'4", runs a 4.34. A shade under. I had called 4.33 as my bold prediction on him, so I don't know what he's doing slowpoke, but what I like about his game to me is beyond just being really fast. I think he is a pretty excellent ball winner in terms of 50-50 contested catch guy, paired with that ability to separate deep downfield, paired with what I see as, for a large human being, pretty impressive stop and start ability, which I still think is not going to be, he's not going to be running in the slot, running a bunch of whip routes. Let's not get it twisted. But when I watch him, at least, I see a guy who I think has enough twitch in his game that he's going to be able to win on hinge routes and comeback routes, and he's going to be able to win on double moves and create separation for himself that way. So I think that he has kind of the whole package of what you need to be that throwback X receiver. I think that he's a little bit more twitchy in his change of direction than, say, like a George Pickens, but that's kind of the world that we're living in. We're living in like the T. Higgins, George Pickens type of universe. I just see him as a twitchier, more live athlete than I think a lot of the guys that have kind of failed down that path, like a Corey Davis or a Devontae Parker, where I see them as more just bulldozers. And that comes through with the 4.34. It comes through with the rest of his RAS score, which is elite. And at least for me, that comes through on the tape. We'll see if that comes to fruition. I do think there's a little bit of a ceiling on that archetype in the cover 2 NFL, where it is a little bit more appealing sometimes in a dynasty managed roster setup to be rolling with a Ladd McConkey archetype of player who is going to be carving through the middle of the field and running more of those crossing routes and running more of those intermediate routes, who's going to be able to put up the high targets per route run. Versus the Thomas guy, where you could see a scenario in the NFL that he's living in the 18 to 20% target share range, and you maybe are happier with him in best ball, and it's a little bit frustrating week to week. So I go back and forth. I do overall still give him the edge as the 4th strongest receiving profile in the class, mostly because, he's coming out early. I understand he didn't break out very early. LSU was always loaded with talent. He was a guy that was on my radar coming into this year. I don't think that he had nothing. He got on the field right away from year one and had a little bit of production. And then total breakout this year, where he winds up with 2.86 receiving yards per team pass attempt in the context of an offense where he's dealing with probably a top 5 pick across from him in Malik Neighbors. So I give him a lot of credit for producing, and then he comes out this year. It's just a matter of, I agree, that archetype is a little bit scary in terms of how big of a ceiling that can have in today's NFL. And I don't, if you're just lining up, running the scale of reps.
Like, I could see him 100% being Gabe Davis. I absolutely can see that 100%. And that scares the crap out of me. But I mentioned that I don't like comps. When I was talking to Jacob earlier today, I kept coming back to T. Higgins. Like, that's what I come back to. But I loved Jacob's comp just a little bit more, and now it's my favorite. Martavis Bryant is so perfect. And remember, Martavis Bryant did give us 1 year of 13 points per game, and he gave us 1 year of 15.5 points per game. That's a wide receiver 2 and a really high wide receiver 3. And that's not a bust to me. That's not 4th best receiver in the class, but that's not nothing either. We're also very much robbed of his true breakout. So that sucks, but I love that comp for him for sure. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about another wide receiver, because I could talk Brian Thomas Jr. all day happily, and we would lose all of our listeners 1,000%. So let's go. Who is your most exciting receiver to catch this weekend, Jacob? Who really stood out to you outside of the top big guys?
Yeah, Worthy obviously is the one who flies off the screen, but I'll go with a different guy that maybe a little bit further down, but I think who did really what he needed to do to potentially get into round 1 is Ladd McConkey.
Yes.
Ladd McConkey comes in under 4.5, runs legit speed, under 4.4, right? What was he, 4.39?
Yeah, 4.39. Yeah.
And then smooth as hell, running through the gauntlet.
Oh yeah.
All the reviews on everything in the drills, all rave reviews. And it's an interesting profile. And it doesn't seem like every time we get a hit of like a certain trend that all of a sudden there's like another guy who pops up, has a lot of the same signals, and we all don't know what to do. And the Lad McConkey is the interesting one this year. And the first look production profile is egregious, frankly.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
It's awful. He's never been above. His all-time high in yards per team pass attempt is 1.55. That's not even a true breakout season based on the thresholds that I use, which is 2 yards per team pass attempt. But his yards per route run is much stronger. And I think a part of that is just kind of how Georgia is, which is they rotate guys around and then they blow teams out. And so a ton of guys backups are in for half the second half. And part of it's playing with Brock Bowers. Part of it's that he dealt with a lot of injuries this year. And so when you do try to go down to the yards per route run and it being so great, my then concern is that going to be a perennial problem in the NFL? It's just going to be a slot-only receiver. And that's why the 4.39 is really encouraging to me, where, okay, maybe this is a guy who can now play slot flanker. If this is a guy who can threaten defenses deep like that, maybe he's going to be able to have that 90% route rate if he really hits, where he's a guy that plays 70% in the slot. When they go out of 11 personnel, he moves outside. That's kind of ideal for what you want in the modern NFL. That's like the Amon-Ra St. Brown sort of route play deployment distribution. So I'm pretty excited about McConkey. And I think we'll see how excited the NFL is. But if he can sneak into round one, I mean, you think of all the teams that have needs at wide receiver at the back end of round one. Those are all the fun teams. So that's a guy that's been moving up for me as I've dove into the data a little bit. I've moved past the stage where I think he's just a meme. And then watching him light it up at the combine, that's a guy where he's probably pressing close to my top 5 wide receivers at this point.
Yeah, and funny you mentioned the first round, because again, draft expert at fantasypoints.com, Brett Whitefield, has been going 32 to Kansas City because he does everything they need, right? He beats that man shell often and very well. Work underneath, outside, they can move him around. I think he fits. I think he would be everything they wanted Kadarius Toney to be. So, I mean, I think if you're the Chiefs, why not just take another swing? But of course, it is every receiver to the Chiefs season. So,
and he is a fantastic route runner. I mean, he lit it up at the Senior Bowl. He does struggle mightily with press coverage, but I mean, a lot of wide receivers do. But he's the technician. He is very crafty. And I think technician's one of the words on your bingo card, Jacob. And just on that, I apologize. Technician.
Yeah, that hits.
He is. It sucks, but he is really, really good at making these things just look routine whenever it comes to route running. Another excellent route runner, similar profile that I really like is Ricky Pearsall right now. Just somebody who, at least early on in the season at Florida, just dominated the targets. He was their offense whenever things weren't going well, and things weren't going well a lot of the time for them. Same thing last year. He's had very inconsistent quarterback play, which is it makes it tough to evaluate him from time to time, but they depended on him consistently. And he's somebody who's going to be going later on in your drafts, who I think definitely has a very good shot at seeing action early on in an NFL career. He is a 5th-year player, so he's going to come out. He's going to be older. I don't know what the ceiling realistically is there, but he's somebody who I think can show value pretty early on. And that's something that we want. Obviously, we do want a much bigger ceiling. I do think Lad McConkey has the higher ceiling out of those two, but it's also going to be reflected in the ADP that you have to pay for each of these players.
Sure. Do you have any, that's probably more of a sleeper down the list from Lucas. Do you have any, Tom? And I can give one maybe a little deeper down.
Yeah. Luke McCaffrey actually looked a lot better than I thought he was going to. He ran a little bit better than I thought he was going to. I don't know if he gets drafted in the NFL. I mean, I could see San Francisco making him Mr. Irrelevant, pair him with his brother. Nah, I'm just kidding. But no, really, I don't know if he's going to get drafted just because he is so little on tape. NFL loves their former quarterbacks at wide receiver, so I can't wait to hear that in an NFL game every time he steps onto the field. But I mean, if you want to go narrative driven, the bloodline is there with their dad being a very good wide receiver. Christian obviously doing his thing. He had respectable numbers for Rice. I mean, over 900 yards over at Rice, second year as a wide receiver, definitely got better. I mean, not the classic Caucasian type wide receiver with his shiftiness, craftiness, being a technician, if you would. He's a little bit more of a straight line burner, but you're talking about a deep, deep sleeper in some of these absolute degenerate 4th and 5th round rookie type drafts in Dynasty and last type picks and startups. I would be hammering Luke McCaffrey over a lot of the bum wide receivers that still get drafted in startups. That's my favorite. Yeah. I just think I think he did really well. I think he did better than I expected. Could probably get a little cleaner out of his breaks, but tracks the football well, runs after the catch well. I like him.
Mm-hmm. My guy for kind of a sleeper is Jalen McMillan. He's a guy who played on that loaded Washington Huskies team, obviously was the national championship this year, and have 3 receivers that are almost certain to be drafted before the end of day 2. The top guy, of course, Rome Odunze. Interestingly enough, in 2022, Rome Odunze puts up 110 targets, 75 catches, 1145, and 7. Jalen McMillan on the same team at the same age goes 118 targets, 8 more, 4 more receptions, comes 47 fewer yards, 2 more touchdowns. Their yards per route run, very comparable. 2.51 for Odunze, 2.32 for McMillan, and then a distant third really on that team is Jalen Polk, down at 1.84. Go into 2023, McMillan suffering with a lot of injuries, plays about half the games that season, and so his his overall production comes way down. But once again, you dig in a little bit per route, and once again, it's Odunze top in the charts with an absolutely absurd 2.93. McMillan 2.30, just barely ahead of Polk at 2.29. And when they're actually on the field, you really have these. It's kind of Odunze 1. And then McMillan, and then Polk, with McMillan much closer to Odunze in 2022, closer to Polk in 2023 while playing through injury. And now he's kind of treated as the third banana. He predominantly played in the slot, which makes a little sense. But in the zone-heavy NFL these modern days, I'm trying to shy away or less away from these slot wide receiver archetypes, these zone-beating archetypes. So McMillan's a guy who I think his production profile is reasonable, and I think has a lot of very valid excuses if we're trying to dive into the whose production profiles maybe not quite as strong as it would be if unfortunate events didn't befall them. McMillan's a guy who found a way to produce a lot in his 3rd year, and you look at the overall picture and you say, well, he's sitting there with 2 other NFLers, 1 potential top 10 pick, and dealing with tons of injuries in his 4th year, still really strong across the board per route. That's a guy that I'm going to be targeting a lot, assuming he gets day 2 draft capital in what appears now to be like potentially even round 3 of rookie drafts.
Yeah, I mean, spot on as always, as to be expected. I do, you know what? I do want to talk about him. I want to talk about your boy from Texas because I feel like we have to get him in. We have a few minutes here. I think we can talk about him. So I've seen a lot on the amateur porn site known as X.com about, speedy wide receivers. They don't succeed. And then I've also seen counter arguments. Well, look at guys like Devonta Smith, right? Well, Devonta Smith was outrageously good. Okay. So he's definitely not there, but he's also a better receiver. Oh my goodness. He definitely has a better receiver profile than a lot of these other burners that we're seeing that always get posted, right? The John Rosses, oh my goodness, I can't even remember them all now. There's just so many burners. Hayward Bay, right? Type receivers that get drafted high for running fast 40s. I mean, Scott Barrett's posted a bunch of it. The memes are out there. Even Henry Ruggs, let's say. But his production profile is actually really good. And it really makes me sit here and wonder, how much does Quinn Ewers suck that his receivers seem to be this good and he looks like he's regressing?
Got a good pass catching running back, got a top 2 tight end, got 2 of the top 6 to 8 receivers.
Can we free Arch Manning at this point? Like, it might be Jover for poor Quinn, but let's talk about him because I actually like him a lot more than I thought I would, if I'm being completely honest. I was expecting to look at, I saw his weigh in. I made a bunch of corny jokes. Oh, he better run fast. Oh, look at Twig Boy. Like I was having a day, right, in group chats because how many people that I know absolutely love him. And then he comes out and he absolutely burns and even looks better in his drills than I was ready to give him credit for. So let's talk about him in a more rational way. And I also do want to get your perspective, Jacob, specifically about how now it's, well, he's undersized. Well, Tank Dell was really good this year. Because I feel like that it is important to put, again, like we did with Kyron Williams, though it might give hope in how the NFL is changing, it's not necessarily a lock. So I'd love to get your opinion on him before we get out of here. This will be the last topic of the day.
Well, it's always the same, right? I mean, a recent outlier from a size perspective or from any perspective, whether it be size, draft capital, production profile, whatever it is, the year after you get one of those outlier hits, people always then act like that outlier is way more likely to hit in the future year. And we know that's just not really the case until we start seeing a sustained change in trend. One hitting is what we always know is going to happen, which is that sometimes things happen and it's never impossible. I think the hope with Worthy is that the speed matters. I mean, it matters to me from a draft capital. Wow. Matters to me from a draft capital perspective, for sure. It's probably what it helps with most. But it does matter to me also from the perspective of, okay, where is this guy going to play? Because the trap that we have gotten locked into with some of these short kings with really strong production profiles is that they end up being slot-only players, right? Rondale Moore has been a slot-only player, and Wan'Dale Robinson, he gets injured partway into his career, so we'll see. But so far has been basically a slot-only player. Josh Downs, who is good, and I have a lot of hope for in the NFL, but I was kind of hoping initially into the offseason that would be a guy that would become a full-time player going into year 2. Now, a year from the Colts is they want to keep him in the slot and draft a wide receiver to play on the outside, replacing Alec Pierce. So potentially another guy who could be a good player locked into that slot space. And so it's concerning when you're a 5'8", 160-pound player. If you're only going to get 70% of the routes, then you don't have a massive ceiling in fantasy football. You need to be able to be a slot flanker. And the exciting part with Worthy is hopefully that 4.21 speed is something where they look at it and say, okay, maybe this is a guy that is going to struggle to beat press coverage consistently as a true outside receiver. But if he's so fast, the field stretcher, they decide to use him more versatily, like we've seen with the Hollywood Brown, who has been able to play inside and outside. I mean, you bring up Henry Ruggs, and he wasn't a fantasy success, but he was
on his way to be dead.
100% route rates. Like he was running all the routes. And who knows what would have happened with him fantasy-wise. But point being, and also he was the 11th overall pick, right? So if Worthy's speed helps his investment and it helps where teams plan to deploy him, if he goes round 1, then I don't think we're looking at a slot-only player, or at least that would be if he fails, right? The team would, I think, have grander visions of him. If he goes in late round 2, teams do draft slot-only wide receivers intentionally in late round 2. So that's the big thing for me. The production profile is great. It's just these small, skinny, short receivers has been a place where the production profile has really led us astray in recent years over a fairly repeated sample. So I'm just going to hold off and wait until we find out where the NFL drafts them and go accordingly.
Yeah, these are the type of players that just have such a wide range. Like they really, really do. I mean, like you said, his production is really pretty good over 3 years. I know a lot of people look at players like, well, look at Jameson Williams, right? He's an absolute burner. He got drafted high. Even he really only had the 1 year, right? If I remember correctly, when he transferred to have that 1 year. I would argue that Worthy's production profile might even be better. And look at how Jameson, so look at how Jameson Williams has just held dynasty value. Even to now, he's worth way more than I think he should. So if Worthy's the type of guy that the NFL says, yeah, we can use him, especially with how the NFL works right now, he's definitely going to be worth climbing up rookie draft boards. He just will be.
The usage with him is what confuses me the most. Just watching him all 3 years in college, his freshman year, far away his best season, and then it seems like Texas was just misusing him, but also misusing him because they didn't have another wide receiver to fill the role. Yes, he has burner speed, but they used him just as their deep man, and his efficiency plummeted during his second year. Yeah, he still had good results. They used him out wide the most they ever been, but that was his worst season. And then this most recent year, still good season, not his best, not comparable to his freshman year, but they were able to use him in the slot a little bit more, not exclusively. He's best whenever he's used out of the slot about 30% of the time. And they had another wide receiver, Adonai Mitchell, to take over running just 60 yards every play to go deep. So I don't think an NFL team's going to draft him with the intention of saying just run straight a lot and be fast. I also don't think that they're going to draft him with the intention of stick in the slot and we're going to use you out in space. I mean, his numbers test really good for being used in space, but that's not where he's best used. He actually grades out the best whenever they're using him over the middle of the field, about just go past the first down line, and there you go. Use your speed, get separation, and then go off to the races. So I'm excited for Xavier Worthy, especially because of where you get to draft him right now. I believe he's going at about the wide receiver 7 in ADP right now, which is awesome. You already hinted that he has a very wide range of outcomes, I believe. We don't want to be drafting based off of the exceptions to the rules, but we have seen examples of these smaller guys who can be successes in the NFL. Yes, we have a lot of examples of them not being, but he is an outlier player just in terms of what his profile looks like, what his testing looks like, and for what you have to pay to get him on your teams. I'm very much in on that right now.
Yeah, he seems like the cheapest best bet. Right. And even if his price goes up marginally with his range of outcomes, I think it's totally fine to take that shot on. If you're going to pick a guy to take your shot on, this is the one for me.
Yeah, fair enough. I'll go with that.
Great episode.
Right.
First of the rookie talk. I mean,
and I promise you guys, if you have rookies that you want us to talk about that we barely talked about, we got 2 months to the draft. If you have someone specific in mind, just like show up in the comments section. I'm sure we'll find 5 minutes of the show to address someone specific or a question you have. But I assume this was the part where you're going to give the rundown of our guests and who we're going to talk about.
Yes. So one thing you can do, and one thing I'm debating doing, is doing a full Q&A type episode. We will post to Reddit, the Fantasy Points Reddit.
Well,
we will post to Twitter, everywhere. We might do
a couple weeks before the draft. That'd be fun.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking we do. If you want an AMA from Fantasy Points, maybe we get Scott or Brett or Graham, whoever wants to pop on, maybe Mr. Hanson himself. We bring him on Dynasty Points. We do a rookie AMA. I think that would be a great time. So if you want that, let us know in the comments section on this video on YouTube, and we'll take that into account. And of course, next week, Scott Barrett, he's coming back to wage war against Jacob for, I think this will be his 5th appearance now on the program.
Is there a war? I'm unaware of the wars.
I will say your highest tilting takes come on whenever Scott Barrett is on the show.
I don't know
you are your most
be
red.
This time. It'll be news to me. But
Your face.
We'll find something.
Your face gets more red than mine after a couple.
Maybe if he starts raging about Brock Bowers.
One of my favorite takes so far, or like clips that I've made being affiliated with the show, is after Scott was saying something about the senior declare wide receivers versus junior declares. And you're like, all right, if we're making up stats and just go on this long tangent, I absolutely love it. I think I sent it to you fairly recently, Thomas, too. So we might have to sneak that into the show next week.
Back into circulation for a preview. I like that. Remind me of that. And if you want more running back talk, we have,
I believe that was like, I believe that was like a debate between every wide receiver who eventually sucked. Like, I'm pretty sure we were talking about like Sky Moore versus Burks versus Dotson, and like there were no winners.
There were no winners.
Chris Olave was also in there because the talk was the projected draft capital of Chris Olave if he came out as a junior versus coming out as a senior.
You're supposed to be on our side, Lucas. Supposed to be on our side here, buddy. Remember what side you're on.
I'm not not on your side.
He's
I'm
on the
just
side of the
recanting
people.
history.
On the side of the people.
If you want more running back analysis, we have, in my opinion, one of the best in Noah Hills on in 2 weeks' time.
Oh, yeah.
Following Scott. I love Noah Hills because his analysis is outside of the box. He does things and looks at running backs in ways that no one else does. He was the first one to be on the Spiller Sucks train a couple of years ago when we had him on. Cannot wait to see what he has in this class. And of course, more guests. If there's a guest that you want to see on the show, well, you can let us know that as well in the comment section and DM us if you would like to. You can reach out at any time. If we can get to your DMs, we absolutely will. So if there's a guest you want to see on the show, let us know. We're going to try to get that done as well. Jacob, you just released something from Thinking About Thinking, which you can get the link for in the description of this video.
Yeah, just a little post. Talked about a lot of some of the big hits from last year and how that could affect this year's draft environment, reflecting on some of my own process. And then I'm in the middle, like I've said, of kind of just whenever I get a chance from work, weekends, etc., of writing up my running back breakdowns. The first run through, I'm going to do it in 2 stages, one focusing mostly on the film side and one focusing mostly on the stat side. And I'll keep saying I'm still collecting any sort of suggestions that people want at any point in time in this off season for more evergreen Dynasty talk about topics that they want me to talk about. Odd thing about thinking. Otherwise, you'll find me on Twitter and wherever. I
mean, we saw Lance Zerline. I would love to get Lance Zerline in there. I mean, we'll take our shot, Ferris. We'll take our shots at Mr. Lance Zerline sure.
I'm not gonna say that we have a high chance of that one, but we'll. As Wayne Gretzky once said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott.
Canadian legend Wayne Gretzky. Lucas, final thoughts before we get out of here.
You can catch me tomorrow night on the Full Tilt Devy podcast. Going to be on with Andy and John. Going to be talking more combine stuff, more of the stats that matter, and are they showing up in these combine test results. I hit a pretty good preview of a lot of the same players that we're going to be talking about. But whenever you're scouting all the teams in college football and trying to keep up with them from the time that they were a freshman to whenever they're a 7th year senior, because thank you, COVID, way that you notice them first is whenever you see a weird thing happening with the stats. So been looking at this the whole time they were in college, and if they are being drafted, we have said their name at least once in the 3 years that the Devy show has been going on. So it's also kind of special because this is the first class that since Devy started, at least the players that are being drafted, we have followed them from time that they stepped on the field as freshmen to now being drafted. So that's a lot of fun. A lot of big names that we have loved the whole time. Some of them tested very well at the combine, like an Xavier Worthy. Some of them definitely did not, like a Bucky Irving. And, it's sad, but it's what it is. And we're going to have a good time. And once again, make sure you are subscribing to Fantasy Points and go and subscribe to Full Tilt. Get 2 entries into our Malachi Nelson jersey giveaway. We are over 1/3 of the way to our goal, and once we hit our goal of 800, we will put another item in for that giveaway. So make sure you're entering again for a chance to win.
Love you guys. I gotta run before the rest of the acknowledgements, but I love you all.
Yes. Take care.
Doodles.
Look, I always like to end the show the same way, and it's to remind people that there are people on the other side of your screens. So when we're talking, when we're arguing, it is a bit of a competitive time of year in the fantasy streets and in leagues and a lot of chats. I like this guy better. You're an idiot. Just remember that there are people on the other side of the screen, right? We always like to remember that kind of thing. There are human beings out there. I want to shout out everyone in the chat. Toronto Dave, Ball is Life. We've got Boyd, Spence, Dave G, Ferris, and everybody else. We love every single one of you. I want you to remember that clear eyes and full hearts can never lose, and your best days, they're always spent tilting. Good night, everybody.